start out with introductions. Jeff, would you please start?
Jeff Gow, representing the wonderful city of Dunedin.
Dave Albritton, representing Clearwater.
I'm Brad Miller. I'm the CEO of PSTA.
I'm Councilmember Dan Saraki for the city of Oldsmar.
Councilmember Gina Driscoll, City of St. Petersburg.
Commissioner Jamie Robinson, City of Largo.
And it looks like we have our state representative Ron Pierce via Zoom. And we have Harry Glenn, our federal legislative representative over in DC. And it looks like it's snowing up there.
Oh wait,
Yeah. Quick,
Mr.
a lot of snow to start the year, so it's 10 inches on Monday and a little bit more today. So.
Hey, Harry, can you hold on 1 second because we have to elect a new chair.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I was going to do public comment. We don't do that first?
Oh, you were just introducing. Oh, I
Yeah.
thought.
He was
Okay.
just saying hi. And
Oh,
talking about
okay.
the snow.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, now we're going to do item number 2. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to action items. Number 3A, elect committee chair and vice chair. All right, I would like to throw my hat in as chair.
Oh, you would?
Yes, I do.
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. I'm honored to be here, and I really appreciate it. All right, now it's time to pick a vice chair. Anybody from the floor would like to volunteer to be our vice chair?
I will.
All
Mr.
right.
Chair, at your pleasure.
I second.
Yep, sorry. Jamie Robinson, I would volunteer to be the vice chair.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Jamie, welcome aboard, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to our next action item, 3B, approve the minutes from the December 1st, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Anybody opposed? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 4, we're going to do our information items, state legislative updates. Ron, you have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I'll be pretty brief this morning. We've got Alan Susky on as well. He's the second Ron Pierce at the bottom there of the screen. We've also got Caitlin Bailey on my team on as well. Just really quick, just from a time frame standpoint, session starts next Tuesday, January the 11th, running through March 11th. So we'll have a lot of updates between now and our next legislative meeting. We don't have much of an update since our last meeting. We're actually meeting with Senator Hooper next week to talk about the Transportation Disadvantaged Innovative Funds. There were dollars included in the governor's recommended budget that came out. It wasn't quite the 10 million we were hoping for, so we're going to follow back up with Senator Hooper and see what the legislature, specifically what the Senate's proposing to do with that. We've also met with him. We're going to follow up with him. We've given him some language. Been working with Uber. I think we reported our last meeting as well. I'm working with Uber on some very specific language as it relates to Transit Rule 1490, as opposed to waiting for the rulemaking process, is working for a legislative fix that would allow transit agencies to work with T&C, such as Uber, to be able to provide services such as our Late Shift program and have those funds be funded out of general funds with DOT and not just transportation disadvantage. So we're still working on that. Again, we're meeting with them next week. And then I think we reported to you, and we've been reporting to Brad as it's been happening. There are a couple bills relating to transportation funding flexibility. Number 1, Cis Funding. There has been a couple bills that are moving. In fact, Representative Diamond's in the process of filing a bill that he's given us a draft of that we've shared with Brad that would also do some additional flexibility opportunities as it relates to Cis. And also there's a couple things that are moving that DOT is pushing through the process internally that also that works from not only Cis but also DDR funding as well. So since our last meeting, when we were in Tallahassee last as a group, we also met with ACA. We have followed up with them with regards to Medicaid funding. I think we're going to have a follow-up meeting with them in January probably, and then hopefully have a follow-up meeting with them again in person when Brad and some board members come up in February, and I believe that is scheduled for February the 15th. and 16th, which is really good timing, by the way, because that's getting towards about week 6 of session, week 7 of session. As you all know, most of the action in Tallahassee happens later in session. So from a timing standpoint, on many of the issues that we're working on, A, from a funding standpoint, but also B, more importantly, I think from a policy standpoint, many of the policy issues we're working on are going to probably be included as part of packages, and many of these packages won't come in for landing until later in session. So I'll stop there. Alan, I'm not sure if you have anything to add, and I'll be glad to answer any questions from the group.
Are there any
No,
questions?
Ron, I think that's pretty much it. I would just tell everybody that, you know, when we look at from a budget standpoint, a policy standpoint, it'll be an interesting session. We've had, I believe, 17 months in a row of revenues exceeding projections. So and on top of the federal money. So I think from when we look at transportation disadvantage dollars, there's certainly an opportunity, hopefully this year, to increase those just because of the budget posture that we're in. And from a policy standpoint, you know, they did not, I think all of us here in Tallahassee noticed, they did not hear many bills during committee weeks. We had special session. They had some other things going on. It was a pretty, I wouldn't say laid back, but they just generally didn't hear many bills in committee. So we're starting off in the process, you know, without a lot of action previously. So I don't anticipate a lot of policy necessarily moving, you know, unless it's the big packages like we're involved in transportation wise will certainly move. But a lot of the things that you're hearing about, I wouldn't expect a lot of action policy-wise, but the budget should be robust, and I think it'll be a good year overall for us to get some of these priorities handled. So.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions on the floor? Okay, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, Ron and Alan. Happy New Year to you guys. Thank you for that update. I did not realize until Clarissa reminded me, but you can follow along in your book behind the agenda of the federal and state agendas. As Ron mentioned, we are planning on going to Tallahassee in February, specifically February 15th. And right now it looks like I'm grateful for our two board members who have volunteered, I think, Commissioner Gao and our chair, Pat Gerard, are planning to come with me. The logistics are a little bit challenging because we're going up there. It's maybe a good day. It is the annual statewide Transportation Disadvantage Day that we'll be up there for on, I think, Wednesday. The 15th is transportation, or the 16th is Transportation Disadvantage Day. So there's like lunches in the courtyard there. And then there, most sort of importantly, maybe for us, is a Commission for Transportation Disadvantage board meeting that day. And then there is for myself, there is a Florida Public Transit Association meeting the following day, Thursday. So I'm going to have to ask, unfortunately, either you or Chair Gerard to drive separately so that you can, unless you want to come with me to the board meeting. The FPTA board meeting and stay till Thursday, but we'll have to drive 2 cars, I think, because it doesn't look like Silver Airways is increasing their service. I was hoping maybe they would. So the logistics are a little bit different for this trip, but otherwise it'll be very similar, where we'll advocate for these things. And I think we're making good progress, or I think as Ron just described, we're as pretty much best situation we can possibly be as sort of accomplishing many of the items on our agenda going into the session as possible. I think things are looking pretty good. This Friday, I have a Zoom call with the executive director of the Commission for Transportation Disadvantage, David Darm. He's calling us. Not so sure of his love for PSTA, Pinellas, urban areas. He seems to be often adopting policies that we don't like, that are not benefit to us. So hopefully that meeting will go okay, and he won't take all of our money. I'll I'll be in a defensive mode, I think. So, yeah, looks forward to getting things going here up in Tallahassee. Thanks, Ron and Alan.
All right, anybody else have any questions? I have a quick question. Ron, real fast, you said Senate Bill 1490, the speaker was kind of low over here. Is that what you said?
No, it's the Rule 1490. Remember, that's the TNC
regulation.
rule that prohibits us spending dollars,
Yeah.
DOT spending dollars on TNC-related projects with transit agencies. It's Rule 1490. That's what it's referred to as.
Okay, thank you. That was the only question I had. All right, well, thank you very much, Ron. Thank you very much, Alan. And Alan, I just want to reach out to you and say thank you for all you do for the city of Oldsmar. It means a lot to me and our city. Thank you so much.
Always happy to help, sir.
All right, let's move on to item 4B, our federal legislative update. We've got Harry. Is Steve here?
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations on your re-election as chair, and congratulations to the vice chair. So, I guess I begin my presentation with a bit of an announcement, and I'm sorry, Brad, we haven't had a chance to talk about this because I just learned about this yesterday. Steve Palmer, my colleague, he's hitting that age where he's decided he's gonna take a little bit of a step back from his work. He's been with Van Scoyoc Associates for 22 years, and prior to that, he did 19 years of federal service in the Department of Transportation and the Congress, and so he's decided over the holidays that he's going to begin scaling back a little bit. So he's asked me to take the lead in working with you all, but to let you and Brad know that he's going to be available to us to provide advice and help us as need be, as he's done all along the way. So you'll primarily be hearing from me at these meetings, but Steve will be available in the background to help us out. So I apologize, Brad, I didn't have a chance to talk to you about that. We were supposed to have a firm-wide meeting on Monday, and then with the snow, it was delayed until yesterday. So anyway, that's my personnel announcement for today. And happy to answer any questions about that. On the general federal side, I think the update from Ron and Alan is I think the state legislature is going to probably lap the Congress in getting their budget and appropriations work done for the year. As you all know from our previous discussions, Congress is operating under a continuing funding resolution to keep the federal agencies running. Yeah. That continuing resolution runs right now through February 18th. All discussions are pretty much on hold right now because the Senate particularly has been focused on trying to figure out how to move forward on the second infrastructure bill, which is the Build Back Better Act. As you may have seen just before the holidays, Senator Manchin kind of threw a wrench in the negotiations when he announced on TV that he was not going to be able to support the bill. And that kind of forced the administration and the Senate leadership to go back and reevaluate their process. What that does is that puts the appropriations process on hold because they've been waiting for the Build Back Better Act to be finalized so they could see what funding was made available in that bill so they can make their final spending decisions in their regular appropriations bills. So I think we're expecting another continuing resolution before the February 18th deadline, with the goal, hopefully, of getting an omnibus appropriations bill done by sometime in March. And the significance of that is the Department of Transportation and FTA can't move forward with any of their regular grant-making programs, including the Low-No program and the Bus and Bus Facilities Grant program, until Congress finalizes their funding levels for fiscal year 22, the year that we're in. And we're currently in the fourth month of the fiscal year with no finalization yet. So that's going to slow down the release of some RFPs that you all traditionally apply for. And we may be halfway through the fiscal year before they come out. So that presents a bit of a problem. The other thing that does, as you will recall, Congressman Chris did a great job at including in the transportation appropriations bill this year, earmarked funding for the inline charger project that you all are working on in St. Petersburg and Clearwater. There's money in the House bill. That won't be finalized, and the money won't be released until, again, these appropriations bills are resolved sometime in February or March. So we'll continue to work on that, monitor that. In the meantime, Congress, we'll talk about this in a minute, Congress will begin starting work on next year's appropriations bills even before they finish this year. So that's a bit of a complication too. So we can talk about that I mentioned Build Back Better. As you will recall in our previous discussions, this is the second infrastructure bill. The first one that has become law in November is the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We'll talk about that in a second. The Build Back Better bill had $10 billion in additional funding for transit programs. These would be grant-making programs, primarily to connect workers to their places of work and residents of low income and affordable housing to transit routes to get them to work. That was a major initiative of the House that was included in the bill that was sent over to the Senate. But again, the Build Back Better is just kind of on hold right now until the Senate and Senator Manchin can figure out if there's some common ground that they can reach. The Senate this week's decided to work on some other issues, including some voting rights legislation, while they continue to negotiate this out. So we'll maybe by the first week of February, when we're back meeting again, we'll have more information for you on that. I would say that the biggest thing that's going on right now in Washington, not including the snow, is the administration is really focused on the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. As you recall, that's a $1.2 trillion piece of legislation that does two things. One is it reauthorizes all the federal highway and transit programs for another 5 years. That's about $500 billion in funding over that 5-year period that provide the annual apportionment that you all receive for your operations, the competitive grant programs we've talked about in the past, including Low-No Bus, the bus and bus facilities grant, some of the research programs you've applied for, as well as the RAISE grant program that you all applied for this past year. All of those things are authorized in this legislation. And the bipartisan bill includes, in addition to that, another $550 billion in new funding over the next 5 years for a variety of infrastructure programs, including transit, transportation, highways, and bridges, but also some climate-related things to increase climate resiliency, mitigation, some research dollars related to the climate. And so all of that's about $550 billion in new spending. 80% of that money will be rolled out through grant programs. So there'll be lots of opportunities. Some of the grant programs will be supercharging existing programs like Low-No Bus Facilities and RAISE grant. And some of these will be new programs like providing for safer streets, more efficient connection of workers to their workplace and those kinds of things. And so our firm, and Steve is leading this effort on the transportation side, even though he's stepping back, he's still going to lead this effort. Our firm is putting together a very aggressive effort to monitor all of the grant-making opportunities that this legislation will provide to try and give advance notice of these programs, what the administration is looking for before the RFPs come out. So you have some advanced knowledge so you can plan, Brad and his staff can plan which project or programs might be good for you all to apply for. There are going to be so many programs, it's going to be difficult to apply for them all. Right. It's going to become a manpower issue. And so we'll continue to monitor those. One of the other things the administration is doing right now is they're actually developing their guidance for all of the agencies that are going to be putting out these RFPs for programs with a focus on some of the administration's areas of focus, which include racial equity, climate change, resiliency and sustainability, labor issues, and workforce, trying to get workers where they need to be and students to where they need to be. And so they're developing criteria right now. The president has appointed Mitch Landrieu, who was a former mayor of New Orleans, is his infrastructure czar, I guess they call him. He's overseeing all of the infrastructure funding that's being rolled out across all the agencies. He's helping to direct implement the writing of these guidelines. And those guidelines then will be sent out to each of the agencies and incorporated in all of the RFPs that will roll out for the new year for all of the grant programs. And so we'll start to see some themes coming out. We'll monitor those and start sharing those with Brad and the staff so you all can begin to think about which projects match up with their priorities and how do you write grant applications that emphasize those priorities. The other issue I think that the administration is really struggling with right now is they have to significantly staff up to be able to roll out these dollars. The federal government was already in the midst of a kind of a brain drain. More than 30% of the federal workforce was approaching age 65 this year. And so they have a lot of retirements coming up. COVID forced other people to retire. And so they've already been short on employees. And so they're they're really trying to focus, one of the things Mitch Landry is doing is focusing on hiring to get more budget analysts, contract personnel, grant reviewers in place to begin writing the RFPs for these new programs and these expanded programs, and to begin the RFP process, because a lot of applications come in, have to be reviewed, the decisions have to be made, and then the funds have to be tracked. And so there's a huge effort underway. The Federal Office of Personnel Management actually has a 30-person task force that started work just before the holidays to figure out how they're going to go through this hiring process to get these people on board so that they can begin rolling out these grant opportunities. On average, just for a point of reference, it takes about 98 days, they estimate, to hire a federal worker from the time the position is advertised to the time the position is filled. So you're talking 3 months, over 3 months just to hire a new employee. So it's going to take some time. The thing I would say is everybody's anxious to get access these funds. This is a 5-year bill. These funds are available over 5 years. Most of the programs will be rolled out with 5 separate annual competitions for these funds. And so there's a little bit of time, and we'll be continuing to watch that closely and giving as much advice as we can on scheduling for those things that are coming out. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the RAISE grant. I know Commissioner Albritton, I know you're particularly interested in that one. As you know, unfortunately, we're not successful in the last round of RAISE grant. The next round of RAISE grant will be 150% more funds will be available in the next round than were available in this round. So there'll be lots of additional funding opportunities. More projects will be funded. Probably be some new guidelines on the criteria they're looking for in those projects. Brad has requested that we arrange a debrief with the Department of Transportation, as we've done in the past, to talk about your application, what the strengths of that application were, and areas that could be improved. We made a request in December. They asked us to hold off on that until January, because some of the things I talked about earlier, they're trying to get ahead of the infrastructure bill and some of the deployment there. So we renewed our request yesterday for a debrief, and we're waiting to hear back from the Department of Transportation. I would assume it's going to probably take a few weeks to arrange that. They're going to go through and get all their notes together from the reviewers of all the projects and put together a presentation they can give you. So we'll stay in touch with Brad and staff about that, and folks who want to be on there. We also worked at Brad's request. We worked on a project to go through and provide an analysis of all of the RAISE grant projects that were funded in November, and did a bit of an analysis of some of the things that were the areas that were common in there. Some things were areas of focus across multiple projects that might be instructive as you start looking at the next iteration of your application for the RAISE grant. So happy to work with you on that. I guess the last thing I would talk about, our last two things, are looking ahead, as I mentioned, the appropriations process. Even though we haven't resolved the current year's appropriations bills, we need to start thinking ahead to the fiscal 23 process. Typically, the federal appropriations process begins with the president's budget release in early February. That's likely to be delayed until at least March, because you can't write a new budget without knowing what your current operating budget is going to be. So we'll probably have a little extra time this year, but we'll need to start thinking over the next few weeks of what you might like to request as a congressionally directed funded project for next year. Congressman Chris has been great with working with PSTA. Congressman Bilirakis has expressed an interest in trying to be helpful. So, we need to think about a possible request that you might want to make for fiscal year 23 and what that would be. And we can start working with Brad and staff on that. As a side note, and I know Brad is always asking us about, you'll recall in the House infrastructure bill that the House passed last summer, the House included about $5.5 billion in earmark spending in that bill. That's separate from the regular appropriations process. And in there, Congressman Chris included funding for a solar energy project for your headquarters there, where they would install solar panels that could be used to charge your electric bus fleet overnight, and then be available, I presume, to charge other vehicles during the day. That project was included in the House bill. Unfortunately, when the House bill went to the Senate stripped out all of the earmarked projects were in the House bill, and the chairman of the House Transportation Committee, Peter DeFazio, is still trying to bring those projects back to life. So, Brad, we may have more when we get to the omnibus appropriations bill. So we continue to watch that and see what's going to happen there. There's still, I think, an opportunity there, Brad, that those may find their way into some future legislation. We will see. Steve kind of estimates that's about a 50-50 chance that we're going to be able to get those earmarks back in another piece of legislation. The last thing I would say is we always talk at these meetings about ones. I know you were talking about your trips to Tallahassee, and we always discuss on these meetings when's the appropriate time to come to Washington for meetings. I would have said in early December that things seem to be moving more towards a normal phase in Washington where you could visit with congressional offices and federal agencies, not so much yet. But I'll tell you that Washington is kind of the epicenter right now for Omicron. It's the numbers are really just jumping in Washington. They've closed the schools. They've gone back to mask mandates. The attending physician for the House and the Senate put out a letter to the membership on Monday extolling members to come up with more aggressive telework procedures for their staffs to keep the staff out of the Capitol, particularly as members are coming back. The Senate's returning this week and the House next week. As members are coming back from around the country, they're just really worried about a big flare-up of virus cases up there. And so I'm not sure, when things will get more back to normal, maybe February or March, I'm not sure. But Brad, I would say that when the time is right and we need to start doing calls, they're still very accessible by Zoom, video calls. Both the agency, Department of Transportation, and the Congress are perfectly happy to do those. And if we can't get you up there in person, so we'll continue to monitor that and let you know how that goes. But I would say it's going to be at least a few weeks before there's any the buildings reopen on the Hill and at the agencies for meetings. So sorry to go on. I know it's a long report, but happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anybody would like to ask any questions? Brad, you want to go?
Sure. Thank you, Harry. Yeah, I guess we'll stick to Zooms for now, hopefully. Speaking of Zooms, and thanks to Commissioner Driscoll hooking me up with Congressman Chris Staffer, we've got a call after this meeting later this afternoon on setting up a virtual town hall kind of situation with Congressman Christ about the infrastructure bill. And we'll see where that goes. It sounded like he was trying to combine I'm not sure, two virtual topics, two town hall topics into one or something. I don't know. I'll find out more this afternoon. But so we'll have maybe have a town hall with Congressman Chris coming up. I'm not exactly sure how that Zoom goes. I know Congresswoman Castro had one that was pretty well attended. It looked like. It seemed like it was pretty organized. As Harry kind of described, it was certainly a fantastic announcement when they finally reached an agreement on the big infrastructure bill. But there's two sort of challenges right now. One, without the appropriations bill being passed, it sounded like about half the money is not really accessible. At least half the money, from what I can tell, is not accessible until they pass the annual appropriations bill. So that's what Harry was describing, that we're kind of in a holding pattern on lots of those things. And the second is, and this is what I had a meeting with the county manager as we were talking right before the meeting about just securing funding for all these different priorities we've got and needs that we have for the ferry, for our own services, etc. Most of the money is going to be in competitive grant application, is going to be allocated via competitive grants, just like the RAISE grant. And it is a major effort, as we know. Unsuccessfully, we tried with the RAISE grant application for the Clearwater Transit Center. But the lack of local funding, if you don't have your local funding, you're not going to be very competitive at getting the federal funding. And the county manager certainly appreciates that and wants to help us as much as much as possible. I know the county commission is having some kind of strategic planning session coming up later this month where they're going to be talking about it. The idea, of course, is to really still focus on our number one priority is getting that new Clearwater Transit Center built. And we have come up, thanks to Debbie Leas and Abhishek Dayal, they've come up with a sort of plan B, an alternative funding mechanism, assuming we would not be able to get a RAISE grant. Although we may still end up applying for a RAISE grant next go around anyway, just as one of the options. But the summary of the strategy is essentially to increase the funding from state and our own funding and other local funding, but also to apply for all of these other infrastructure bill funding pots, and then do what I always call a three-card Monty, get money for electric buses, which we already, don't tell FTA, DOT, we already have money set aside in our CIP for that, and then we can take that money and put it toward the transit center, to building the transit center. Essentially, being successful, maybe where we can be successful in getting some other grants on electric buses, maybe from the earmarks for the solar panel stuff, and then freeing that money up to put toward the Clearwater Transit Center. I think we can be successful. We certainly can keep the project going for now through the design process and keep it on track. I've got a meeting with the city manager next week on it. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll have a lot to talk about with the county and looking at and just seeing how we can best be competitive with these. A trip to DC, Harry and I talked before Christmas that might be a part of it, to try to just really get on their radar screen that, hey, we're Pinellas County, we're not Tampa, but we're in the Tampa Bay area, but just to kind of get our name better known. I mean, I guess we'll try to do our best with that via Zooms for now, and then hopefully maybe in the springtime we'll be able to get up there to DC. Yeah.
Thank you, Brad. Jeff?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, can I, going back to Brad, can I just comment on one thing Brad said?
Yes.
Brad, as you're looking at doing these forums with members of Congress about the infrastructure bill, I think it might be helpful for you as commissioners, but also for some of the state groups, Brad, your federal transit group and others, to start emphasizing that Florida really needs to get its fair share of these infrastructure funds as they're rolling out these competitions. You know, on the RAISE grant side, as you know, there are only 2 projects were funded in Florida on the RAISE grant list this November, which is, you know, for the 3rd largest, most populous state in the country. You know, Florida has some transportation challenges. And, you know, as you're talking to Congressman Christ and others, anything we can do to rally because Florida's the 3rd most populous state, it also has the 3rd largest congressional delegation. You know, how we can rally the delegation to make sure that Florida gets its fair share of grants. The Port of Tampa had applied earlier this year for a port infrastructure development project, and we have 15 ports in Florida. The list of projects came out. There were 25 projects awarded. None were from Florida. And so I think, you know, as we're looking at, and, you know, Brad, you had this major transportation conference with the state and some of the 8 local surrounding counties here in December, and there was conversation about transportation needs and rail and other issues. You know, the more we can rally the region, I think, to talk about the need just to bring more resources into Florida, I think is going to be important, because there's going to be a lot of competition, as Brad said, for these funds. And I think we really need to do a collective job to make sure that as the administration is deciding where to put these funds, that they look to Florida. You know, how can the 3rd largest state in the country not be receiving, you know, a larger share of these federal transportation funds? So I think we really need to call upon all of our resources, whether it's the National Association of Counties, the Florida League of Cities, the Florida Association of Counties, the Florida Transit Group, you know, all of those organizations. We need to start, I think, spreading the message that, hey, pay attention to Florida. There are some real needs, particularly in the transit area in Florida. So I don't know, Brad, we're happy to work with you. And any way we can do to try and get the delegation in a bipartisan way to talk about that with the administration as they're developing their funding priorities.
Thank you, Steve. We've got two questions on the floor. Gina, you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. Has there been any collaboration between Representatives Christ and Castor on promoting transportation projects in the Tampa Bay area? So if we're going to start, if we're going to ask Florida's delegation to step up and kind of, circle the wagons, we can start with that at home. So I'm wondering how much cooperation there's been between the two here locally to help out Tampa Bay as a region. Or maybe,
I don't know, Brad.
perhaps
I don't know, Brad, if you want to take that, or, I guess what I would say is I think they're working in their respective congressional districts, Councilman. I think, Kathy Castro's been working hard on some Tampa projects, and obviously Charlie Crist has been working really hard on some of your priorities in the area here. So the one thing I think, Brad, maybe you can comment on this, I think the State Department of Transportation has really stepped up in the last year or two. David Gwynn has done a great job at promoting the needs in the Tampa Bay area, and I think the state has been more aggressive about trying to work with all the applicants for the various programs to try and show support where they can and match funds. When Brett talked about matches, I know the state would be providing a match for the transit center and some other projects. So I think the state has done a pretty good job at that. And I guess my only point is, Commissioner, I think, the chairman the ranking Republican on the House Transportation Appropriations Subcommittee, Mario Diaz-Balart from Florida, one of the most senior, I think the third most senior member of the House Transportation Committee, Dan Webster from north of Pasco County. He's senior leader on transportation issues. So I think we have some folks in the delegation that are trying to work on this. I just think we need to give them, I think the first thing we need to do is convince the administration that they need to invest more in Florida, and then figure out which of those projects that they want to fund in Florida. But we can't go through cycles where Florida's getting nothing from these grant cycles. That's really difficult. So
right,
and
that may
the
be
pools
happening. That may be happening because we're working in silos, and so I
Right.
agree. We should have more of a concerted effort, but it should start at home.
Yep.
I say we encourage that collaboration in the Tampa Bay area and let it radiate from there.
Yeah, no, I agreed.
And Brad, Commissioner, whenever we go to Washington, we do include Congresswoman Castor is always on our list of meetings. We've met with her, I think, Brad, every time you've gone up, we've talked to her about the projects, and I think she understands that the counties all need to work together, because workers from Pinellas, residents of Pinellas go to Hillsborough to work, and residents of Hillsborough come to Pinellas to work, and we need to have transportation to connect the workers to their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, as Harry brought it up, we had seen, it just is sort of a different structure, but we have seen, I would say, an improvement over the last several years on the collaboration at the state level because of Secretary Gwynn, our district secretary. The DOT's staff is allocated by districts across the state. The federal government really doesn't work like that, and then there's the Pinellas delegation. They have their own meetings at the state level. The federal, there's no districts like that for the administration, the FTA and all that really gets involved. I mean, the good news, I met the policy director for the US DOT, and he grew up in Pasco County, so he knows where Clearwater is. So, that's positive.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a different thing. I don't know how to score the collaboration of our congressional delegation. But the more that we work together, locally as local officials, I think that can only bubble up.
Right.
What do you think?
Right, we could certainly encourage it. The other
Yeah.
question I have is this spreadsheet that you gave us. I recall, I believe it was in our last meeting, when we were discussing the raise grant and the fact that Clearwater did not get, we didn't get that. At that time, I had asked for, an evaluation of who won and why, so that we could learn from that and, use that information and insight to do better and create a winning grant application next time around. So is that what this spreadsheet is?
It is, I apologize for the eye test that it is.
Yeah.
I tried to make it as big as I could. That is not the entire list of projects awarded to raise grants. That is the list of transit centers.
Okay,
The transit centers that were awarded.
that's good.
And so the first look of that, Harry has sent me the whole list of all the projects that were awarded and everything like that too.
Okay.
But if you look at that list, and I've scrutinized it as much as I can, and if you try to look at it, well, is it political? Is it
Yeah.
by state?
Yeah. Harry,
There's some
Harry,
notes in there.
Harry, do you have this spreadsheet as well? Did you get a
I
copy
do.
of it? Okay.
I do. Yeah, we developed that spreadsheet
like
for
that.
you, so
Oh,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing that, on the percentage of federal, Palatka got 100%, of course, it was only 8 million, but, most everybody got 50%, most of them are 17, 7%. So, what percentage of the 25 million was that to the intermodal center?
It was 80%. And that's one thought that we have is that maybe you just can't, it's not really likely. I think there maybe is one that got 25 on there, isn't there? But 25 was the max that you could apply for.
Yeah.
So that's, we put in for the max, but maybe, just like all of these different pots of funding that Harry was describing, they all have like a sweet spot that maybe we, and Abhishek and Debbie's Plan B is trying to match more realistic asks to the different pots of funding that they're identifying. That is something that I think we can safely say, if we have a better match, we'll be more competitive.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a funding strategy we need to bump up for local. I'm not sure how we do that, but,
Yeah.
I mean, the notes on this one for the Palatka one was, I noticed on the phone call we had with the DOT, or the US DOT, they were talking a lot about the buzzwords and regionality, how does it affect with the they wanted to make sure region was considered, and of course all the buzzwords we hear now, all that. And I see that's even in the notes here on the,
Yeah.
which I think is the description, that we have all these covered with ADA and bicycles, and, I mean, it's an intermodal.
We
center,
did,
so
I mean,
we did.
I think that we've looked at that Palatka one, Palatka is a very small town in
Yeah.
north of Orlando, and it is an Amtrak station upgrade. It is to make an Amtrak station that's been there for a long time, ADA accessible. And they're, to my understanding, the construction project is just at the station, but the grant application was awesome. It is going to transform and cure cancer in Palatka. I mean, it is amazing. It is going to connect all the streets and do all this stuff. So, I mean, it seems somehow, if we can somehow just, do as much as we can to describe the regional benefits and how it connects, I don't know. Certainly, the eloquent writing of the Palatka train station upgrade renovations was a model, I would say.
I see.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Gina, do you have anything else?
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, Jeff, you had a question, I saw you blinking your light.
I did blink my light. Is it still blinking? All right.
Nope.
All right, I'm a go. Thank you, Chair. Back to the virtual town hall, just real quickly. That meeting this afternoon is just an organizational meeting. It is not the
Right.
town hall.
It's not the town hall.
Okay, and so, will we have a chance to participate
Oh, yeah.
or listen in?
Yeah,
On that?
if we lock down, whenever we lock down the date for when it happens, you'll all be invited.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Fabulous. Gina talked about collaboration, and we've had a lot of conversation this morning about that and who we should be reaching out to. And I agree with that. We got Pinellas County, their strategic planning session coming up. We should be reaching, even though we've got some county commissioners on our board, we should still be reaching out to each commissioner with how we see the play between PSTA and the county. We should be doing that at the state level. We should be doing it at the federal level. And the country needs to know who PSTA is. And I know I'm talking in big sweeping conversation and words, but that truly is it. That we need to tell our story to anybody who will listen, and not to get beaten down when we don't get that grant, but just to keep going. Okay, we lost that one, it's the next one. The sweet spot in this, and I know that we may never really know the answer as to why them and not us. But when we talk about a sweet spot, do you think that's a dollar amount, or is that a percentage of the project? Right, that sweet spot in the ask, are we asking for too much? Or that 25 million, that was 100% of the project, and they'd rather see some buy-in from other sources, so we're not going for Daddy Warbucks for the whole project itself, that we're working other angles. And also, because I'm new, with this application that we put in, is that available? Can I get a copy of that application so I have a much better understanding
Oh, yeah.
moving forward?
I think it might be on our website, but yeah, definitely.
Just an ask, so I have that. And then also within the application, maybe it's a matter of also touting other successes within our region or in our state. So on the next application, we should be referencing PLACA. And thank you very much, and that's what it's done for this, and somehow make that connection between Pinellas County and Palatka, and not just focus on us, but listen, we're just one small part of the region, one small part of the state, and just tell our story. And because public transportation throughout the state is part of the solution for the traffic problems in the state. And we're playing our role, but our role is just one small role for all the other small roles throughout the state to finally get connected and make something happen. So we should be celebrating Palatka, even though we're in competition. And then also, because I am a big believer in the percentage thing, that we should be looking at all avenues and what can we do locally, so we can tell on the next federal grant application, hey, we're also getting money from Pinellas County. Hey, we're also getting money from the state. You know, we're also putting our own money into it, so that they can see that we have skin in the game. There's some buy-in, and it's not just we'll just sit around and wait. If we don't get it, we'll try next year. We'll try next year. That we're taking steps forward, and those are. I guess I had some questions and I guess some comments in there as well. So thank you, Chair, very much.
All right, great. Go ahead, Gina, go ahead.
Thank you, and, thank you, Commissioner Gao, you made some really great points there. Commissioner Alberton, has the city of Clearwater, discussed committing any funds to contribute toward the center?
No, I mean, what we did, we committed, it was over $1 million with the land trade.
Okay,
The value of the lands were
Yeah.
okay,
different, so Clearwater did, this was the first year that Clearwater did, give the land, to PSTA, and that had a value to it.
okay. So perhaps that should be included in, and maybe it was, discussed in the grant application, but that could be, if I was doing it, I would have included that as part of the total cost and
Oh,
used
yeah,
that as
it
part
We
of.
did, and
Okay,
when we were on the call with Washington, I made him aware that Clearwater did have
yeah,
skin in the game, that, we did, actually give them the land for it when the value of of the
Right,
land.
so, yeah, we counted the land that with the new trans center is gonna be on, that the city is giving us that land for free. And then the, and not, there's sort of there was a discussion of whether could we only count the Delta, because we're giving them our transit center, our current land that PSTA owns, and getting the new parcel. But no, we counted the whole amount of the new parcel.
Okay.
And that's what we thought was, one of the comments we got back from the debriefing, the first time we were unsuccessful, is that, well, maybe we didn't have the land totally locked down, the site locked down. So this time we had, the city council passed a resolution, and we touted that big time in our application. So I don't think that was really the issue. I don't know. We'll find out once we get this debriefing whether there was something some part of our application that was unsuccessful. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Jamie, do you have anything?
Just real quick, and this, I don't know if this is appropriate for this meeting or for another meeting, or for the executive board, but, Brad, you just said that the city of Clearwater passed a resolution for the land swap?
Yeah.
Is that correct? So my understanding is now that there's, with the new city manager in Clearwater, and David, you can probably fill this in a lot better, and my understanding is that he's not completely on board with this land swap, and that there might be some,
No, that's not true.
okay,
What he's doing is, there's been some shuffling around of what land PST really wanted. We've always thought that the corner lot, Court and Myrtle, was the PSTA intermodal site. And then I heard from Avacek that they were talking about maybe taking the one next to the MSB, which is the lot just north of that, and not taking the corner lot. But the new city manager has a plan, and he hasn't brought it to council yet.
right,
Because we've been talking about where we're gonna put City Hall.
right,
His idea is, and it's different than what has been mentioned before, it's been mentioned, but his idea, he thinks that it'd be better to have the new City Hall next to the MSB in a city campus with all the city, offices together. So that puts it back on the original site that, when we did the interview, the press conference, we were on the
Yeah, this
original
picture here.
corner site.
right.
That's the only thing, and it hasn't been, that's just an idea he has, he's
Sure.
gonna have to sell it to council.
That was my understanding as well. So I just wanted to kind of, for, I guess, my personal edification, just figure out where we are, because
It's
as
real
we're moving through
important
this
that,
process.
at least in my, and I think most of the council, we need to have that 500 block, because we need to build a parking garage on that lot. So we've already negotiated with the second half of that lot, that the county owns utilities, to buy that from them. And we need to get PSTA moved so we could start, imagine Clearwater's vertical now. The park stuff is all coming out of the ground, and we took 1,000 spaces from the waterfront to build this park.
Yes,
We have to have a parking garage, and we've been talking for 20 years, that's the place where it's gonna be. So there's other things that are in play here that are important to me as well, but the intermodal center is very important.
yeah,
We need
no,
to get that
absolutely.
going.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for the clarification.
All right, thank you. And last thing I just want to mention is, David, I think all of us here support your project, and we will do anything as far as legislative priorities to make sure it happens next time. And I just
Great.
want to thank you for all your service and what you're doing for the city of Clearwater.
Well, thanks.
And Steve, I think we're done. I think you're done. Thank you so much.
Harry.
Thank you.
Or Harry, excuse me, Harry. Yeah, thank you, Harry. All right, we're gonna move on. Item number 5, any other business? Anybody have anything for the record? Nothing. All right, then I think we're gonna be adjourned, and we got 5 minutes left, and that's it, we're done. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Great meeting, guys. Great meeting to kick off the year. Great job.
Hey, Jeff. you know I'm running for reelection in March.
Yep.
And I'm talking to different organizations for endorsements. I go to this afternoon to Pinellas Realtors. And I've already